Welcome to Viewer's Choice, Thursday night, 6:30 at the St. Louis Chess Club. Today we're going to examine a game of Mr. JamesKirkland versus BanelingKing. I think today's games are much more instructive than the previous week, so I'm looking forward to this class. Let's start with the first game. I have two of them. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to go through both of them, but let's try to do that. Both of them are quite long. C4, C6, E3. This is a common way of confusing your opponent and also keeping your options open, because you're not committing this pawn all the way to D4. The structures resemble very much like a normal Queen's Gambit decline, or like potentially a Slav if he plays E6. I mean, it transfers into a lot of potential openings, but with the pawn on D2, I'm reserving this option of playing D3 at the right moment. And generally, this bishop on C1 is actually going to go to B2. So the positions are a little bit different. The theory is non-existent, basically. There's only plans rather than precise opening theory. And usually the people as white that try to get their opponent out of the theory land and try to just simply play a game are going to use this flexible setup. Knight f6, d4. I was talking so much and then he played d4 instead of b3. But once again, b3 in general, I think I played it a few times. I remember seeing Shankland from the American players playing this this setup. If I'm not mistaken, Nakamura tried it as well once, but I might be mistaken. I know Shankland versus Conrad Holt, they had one or two games in this specific variation. D4, now we're simply transposing into an E3 Slav. E6, now this is the demi, or semi-Slav. Knight C3, Knight bd7, Queen c2. So far so good. Both players are developing their pieces. White is going to delay as much as possible the move bishop e2 or bishop d3, because simply he wants to take on c4 with the bishop from one move. And both players are going to try to do that, to delay this move d takes c4. At some point, this move will have to be played. For example, if white would play something like bishop e2 in this position, black will simply just take on c4, bishop takes c4, and then we're entering a structure that resembles a little bit that of a Meran system, the Botvinnik, bishop e7, castle, and at some point b5, bishop b7, and try to open up the position with c5. If we remember, we had a very similar structure in the game of Aronian that we analyzed last week in the games to know by heart class against Najdic. If you are at home, you can go review it, and it will give you a nice insight into how to approach this type of structures. So he played Queen c2, very normal move, very natural move. Bishop to d6, g4. Very interesting move. I really like this approach. Well, basically white is just trying to play unconventional chess. I've seen it even at highest level. Even Nakamura, I think, tried a similar approach. If you take on g4, I'm simply going to go rook g1. And then you're going to have some problems with the g7 pawn. Wherever you move your knight, I'm going to take on g7. And then you will find it quite difficult to get your king to safety. I think taking on h2 should be quite dangerous. Though, who knows? It might be quite good. Take, rook takes g7. I'm also threatening the pawn on h7, so I think that's quite problematic as well for black. And in the same time, I'm having another threat. Can somebody Tell it to me. For the sake of argument, let's just say black is going to go something like h6 to protect that h7 pawn. What is our second threat? It's a move. Rook h7, it's a move. The problem is, which is part of my candidates as well. The problem is I'm going to have ways to defend this rook on h8. I can simply just exchange it if I want to. I can also play a move such as queen f6. So it's not necessarily the wisest idea to just start running after that pawn. I think we have better alternatives. F4, absolutely. We have to always ask ourselves, what are our opponent's pieces doing in certain strange positions, like this bishop on h2. Can we block him? Can we block his exit? Can we capture it, right? So f4 does that. In the same time, it attacks him, right? So everything is forced. He does have one move to defend it, queen to h4. But now we can continue with what move? Another powerful move to retain the initiative. It's a check.
Oh, yeah.
It's a check. Queen h4 is a check. Be very careful, Mr. Ken West. I'm giving up your identity. So be very careful. What are the candidate moves?
Queen f2, I think.
Queen f2 is one of them, or just simply moving the king away. Queen f2 is a little bit more forced, yeah, because we're obliging our opponent to make a decision, and after queen f2, I don't think his decisions are going to be good. Well, his options are going to be good because he can take on f2, but then we just simply take back, and now the bishop is still restrained on h2. And next move, we're going to go either king, actually not king g2. I think we're going to attack it with a rook to g2. The rook comes back from enemy territory, and then the bishop on h2 is going to have huge problems. Yeah, he's locked. He's bye-bye, gone. So that's the second threat. That's why I think knight takes h2 and just knight takes g4 in general is quite dangerous. So he played the move d takes c4, g5. We're not necessarily going to worry about the pawn on c4 immediately because we have other important things to do, and that is just expand on the king side and immediately create some sort of initiative there. Knight to d5, bishop takes c4, b5, bishop to e2. So far so good, quite natural moves. Bishop b7, knight to e4, attacking the bishop on d6, centralizing the pieces. Also potentially avoiding the exchange of the knights because we have space advantage, and whenever we have space advantage, we don't generally want to exchange pieces. So I think white so far is doing all the right things. Bishop to e7, h4, natural move. Nevertheless, white also has to be a little bit careful because if his attack doesn't succeed, then this is going to turn into what? How do we call when we're moving our pawns like this aggressively on one side and then the attack just doesn't succeed? We're going to be overextended. And we definitely don't want to be overextended in an endgame because if that happens, then black is just going to be able to start attacking our pawns, and our structure is going to become from a strength and a pillar of force to just a liability. Yeah. So you have to be very careful. Keep the pieces on the board. Try to continue with powerful moves. Always maintain your initiative. If you lose that initiative, you're going to be overextended, and structurally you're going to be worse. Technically you're going to be worse. Knight to b6, knight c5. I don't like knight b6. Consequence of it is it leaves the c5 square available for my knight. And these two knights are pretty much stepping on each other's feet, right? It's not really doing much. This knight b6, connecting the knights, but to be honest, connected knights are not that good. Again, they don't have squares for each other. So maybe we can find a different plan here. I think black should try to do something else. Something very common, actually, in this type of positions. What is the most common thing you have to do in these structures, in these Botvinnik structures? Any ideas? We've seen it actually in the last game, in the Aronian Knightage from last week. We've seen this idea. Black has to do something immediately in order to kind of survive, strategically at least. Ask yourself what my worst pieces are, how I can improve them. What am I expected to do from a theoretical point of view whenever my opponent is attacking me and is expanding on one side? Attacking the center, absolutely. So how can we attack the center? Will e5 help our cause? I don't think so. What would help our cause, though, would be if we get to play c5. This is very typical. Whenever you see this structure, you're always going to think about this break. Either c5, either e5. e5 a little bit more rare, but c5 very often you're going to see it. Unfortunately, I think c5 just loses a pawn. Yeah, probably loses a pawn. Probably loses a pawn because I can just simply take, and then I think this pawn is also hanging. So we can actually kill two birds with one stone in this position. We can support c5 and defend the pawn on b5 with the same move. And I think that's queen b6. Yeah.
What about rook c8? I mean, it doesn't help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, rook c8 is a very a typical move to support c5 as well. Queen b6, rook c8, maybe a6 at the right moment to strengthen the pawn on b5, but a6 sometimes is a loss of tempo. Yeah, you have to be fast in these positions, because if white manages to potentially lock the queen side with a3, b4 and stop you from playing c5, then strategically you're almost lost. Because of this bad bishop on b7, my space advantage and so on. Yeah, I have a lot of trumps in my hand, but if you manage to play c5, suddenly all your pieces are starting to liven up. The bishop on b7 especially, and this is a monster. This bishop on b7 is one of the best pieces Black has at his disposal. So I think instead of knight b6, queen b6, or rook c8, as you were mentioning, Jason, would definitely help Black's cause much more than knight b6. Yeah, knight b6 not so much. I don't like it at all. Knight c5, queen c7. Also, you're giving up the e5 square. So you're giving so many squares as Black. That knight on d7 was a very, very important defensive piece. It was defending a lot of squares. e4, knight to b4. Now all your pieces are starting to be displaced. All of Black's pieces are starting to be displaced. Queen c3. Also this queen, nice diagonal, ready to attack on the king. Knight on b4, you probably don't want to go long castle. You probably don't want to go short castle. So Where are you going to go? You know, suddenly you're in big trouble. A5, A3, another good move, displacing that powerful knight, forcing him to go to A6, which is a terrible square. So White did indeed play most of the right moves at the right time. His timing was actually quite good. Knight takes B7. Okay. That's a move I wouldn't make. At first glance, I don't know. Maybe it just works. But to be honest, this bishop is already locked. The knight on C5 is there, keeping a tight grip on the position, and the bishop on B7 is basically a useless piece. If he manages to get it out, sure, it's going to be a huge piece. Unfortunately, that's much easier said than done. So, would you trade such a powerful knight for such a passive piece on B7? Most of the times not. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to do it now. To be honest, I would have rather exchanged it for the knight. No, I don't want to move. I don't want to displace my knight from C5. I just want to develop my pieces. I can either go bishop. Yeah, I have to go bishop E3 actually. I do have to go bishop E3. And why do I have to go bishop E3? Actually, I'm not sure if I have to go bishop E3. Okay, so the tactic I was worried about, for example, if I go H5, this was my other candidate move instead of bishop E3. The tactic I was worried about was knight takes C5, d takes C5, and knight A4, attacking both my queen and the pawn on C5. The problem is, as I mentioned, this queen is nicely placed to attack the pawn on G7. And with that being said, I'm not sure how this position suddenly starts looking like. Because White's king is not as safe either, yeah? I mean, we haven't found shelter for him yet. I'm still pretty sure, I might be wrong, but I'm still pretty sure White should be close to winning by being greedy and taking another pawn. And after we take this pawn on C5 with the knight, defending the pawn on E6, now we cannot allow black to play a move such as rook F8 and start getting the initiative, start pushing our pieces back. So what we have to do, we have to act immediately. And we have to start pushing his pieces back immediately with bishop F4. The queen doesn't really have a good place to move in order to defend the bishop on E7 and preserve his initiative. If he goes queen D7, I will just simply go rook D1, maybe even knight E5, and I think this position is quite good for White. I would say winning. Yeah, it's safe to say it's winning for White. Because we're forcing the queen exchange. If we get the queen exchanged, then I think that's a pretty nice position. Black has a nice little tactic with knight D3, but I don't think it works. What would you guys play in this position after knight D3? Actually, this might actually work. Okay. At least to complicate matters. What's the point of knight D3?
B4 check.
Correct. Correct. So if you take either with the bishop, either with the rook, I'm going to play bishop B4, discovery check, and then you're going to lose your queen. So the only other move that's available to us is what? King to F1, exactly. King to F1, and I think this is the best move in the position. And I was trying to understand what happens after a move such as rook DF8 or rook HF8. I think White is good. I think White can just simply play something like queen G7. Now you cannot take because you're losing the other rook. I think you have to play here, and then I can even continue taking some pawns. And then at some point I'm going to be like, okay, I don't want equality. I'm just going to move my queen. Then you take back, then I take on d3, and okay, pieces are equal, but I have, I think, 2 pawns up. I'm 2 pawns up. And also look at these monsters. Look at these monsters ready to promote, yeah? So white's activity is just too much for black in this particular case. Wait. We might have missed something, guys. I might have missed something. What did I miss? I did miss something.
Bishop on the queen.
That's my last move. My last move was bishop f4. This is a mistake. I just realized it. Very good. Knight d3. Indeed. Suddenly, I think this is actually good for black, because bishop d3, the same idea. Bishop b4. It doesn't matter. The queen is under attack. King f1. The problem is right now the queen is on c7, so we have 2 attackers on the f4 bishop. Yeah, we can just simply grab the bishop now. That's going to be a piece down for us, for white. So yeah, actually knight d3 does come quite powerfully in the game. So if I don't have bishop f4, then suddenly I would like to attribute black some initiative. I think he has some initiative. With good play, with very precise play, I think white should hold this and make use of his extra material, extra pawn. With that being said, from a practical point of view, this is no easy task. Because black's pieces seem, at the moment, quite coordinated. That queen on f7, I'm a little bit worried I'm going to lose it if I don't pay attention. Of course, I still have a safe route to go back via g7, c3, but if black manages to find a way to take that away from me, then I'm in trouble. So, with that being said, that's why I wouldn't play h5. I don't want to give my opponent any sort of counterplay. I've been preaching that over and over again. Whenever we have a strong strategic advantage, like in this case, there's absolutely no reason to give counterplay. And for that reason, I would just play bishop e3 to defend, extra defend the knight on c5. And right now, after knight takes c5, knight a4, I can just simply play a move such as queen c2. Defending the pawn on c5, this knight is quite restrained on the side, and I think white is just winning. Okay, he took knight takes b7. Inaccurate. Queen takes b7. Bishop to f4. Castle. h5. Yeah, that's the castle. I don't like this move, castle. No. Actually, okay. It might be okay.
Do you want to castle into that pawn storm?
You don't want to castle on the queen side either. You cannot castle on the queen side. If you castle on the queen side, suddenly tactics abound in the position. With the king on c8 and with the absence of the light square bishop on b7, who would have been a good defending piece, yeah, this doesn't look good. This the pressure on the c file is just too much. So it's either you castle, either you don't create a connection between the rooks and you don't necessarily put your king to safety. And you're not going to be able to play c5 either, because the b5 pawn is hanging. So what I want to do is support the move c5. Maybe play b4 first and then c5, but I need to get c5 going. If I don't get c5 going, there's nothing going for me. There's absolutely no other way to create counterplay. So I think for the moment, castle is okay. My pawn storm is not as fast. And I actually have a feeling black might be getting close to creating his own counterplay, just because of that knight takes b7 move, giving the strong knight the staple of our position for the passive bishop on b7. Okay, h5, b4, looking good so far for black. I like the way he's trying to create some counterplay, though I would have played c5 directly. I want to get my pawns moving as soon as possible. I want to open up and counter-strike in the center as soon as possible. I think after c5, I don't know who's better.
That pawn's not hanging.
Which one?
B.
It definitely is, but yours is as well.
Oh.
That's the thing. c5 injects such a dynamic play into my pieces. It opens up everything. Yeah, it opens up the important diagonals. The a8 h1 diagonal. Even with the bishop on b7, still, I would get a lot more activity. If you in this structure, c5 is critical. And yeah, I'm not really sure who's better. What is for certain is that black is getting a lot of counterplay, and I think that's more than he could have hoped for a few moves ago when the knight was still on c5. Okay, so he played b4. Still not a bad move. As long as it's followed by c5, I think he should still be okay. Black should still be okay. Queen to c2. a4. No, why? Loss of time. This is just a loss of time. Once again, c5, extremely important. Play a4, h6. With the knight on c5, the character of the position was much different than without the knight on c5. It was much more revolving around strategic play. Right now, it's all about dynamics. It's all about who's going to get first to the opponent's king. Because we don't have that plug on c5 to stop black's counterplay. G6. Dark squares are ready for white to take. I don't like this move. I don't understand this move. This is the type of very unnecessary exchange. Where's the knight on a6 going? Nowhere. Correct. Nowhere. At least not anytime soon. He needs to find a place for that knight on a6. He needs to find a way to activate it. And white was like, okay, bring your knight into play. I'd love your knight to come into play. So I'm going to take on b4. I'm also going to create a weakness on b2. Absolutely unnecessary. So another misconception and mistake. Bishop takes b4, no. I would take with the knight. I would take with the knight because I want to get my knight into play, and I want to keep this bishop close to my king. I want to have him ready to defend the dark squares, which are the problem in black's position.
If white doesn't take the pawn on b4,
Mm-hmm.
is he better off putting his bishop on e5 or his knight on e5?
I think so. I think so. I think that's a good plan. I think bishop e5 maybe, which he did actually. I think if I'm not mistaken, I think he did bishop e5 at some point. But once again, it's a matter of a few moves here, a few tempos, and I do think bishop e5 is more precise. With that being said, I think black still is fine. I might even go something like, actually no, I'm going to go c5. I'm going to try to open up your position as well, as soon as possible. Again, white is slowly looking like it's overextending too much. And it doesn't look like he's going to be able to make use of his advantages, which are the weakness of dark squares in black's camp. The problem is, how are you going to get to those? How are you going to get with a queen to those? Yeah, because you would like to checkmate.
Move your knight out of the way and push the f pawn?
But that's even more overextension. And then you push the pawn, you go f4, f5, and then what? That took 3 long moves. Imagine what black could do in those 3 more moves. And even if you get your pawn to f5, you're not going to do much.
You're not cracking anything.
No, 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 you're not cracking anything. I can even take. Imagine this. I'm not moving anything. You move your knight away. You play f4, f5, and then I'm going to take. You cannot take back because your rook would be hanging, right? So does f4 look like a good plan? No. Does it look like a natural plan? Yes, it definitely does. But sometimes natural plans are not the best ones. So yeah, I think c5, and if the computer doesn't say anything, which I don't know if it does or not, I think black is just simply better in this position. He played a takes before. Bishop takes before. Okay, c5. Very interesting. Finally we play c5. A move that I was asking for in the past 10 moves. Bishop e5. Okay. Black is still fine. Probably better. No. c4. Now this is a move I don't like. I really don't like c4. The level has been quite good. But there are these small little inaccuracies, and most of them are based on just wrongful understanding of the position. What should black do? Does he want to close up the position on the queen side? Or maybe does he have any other better options? Because knight d7 and yes, that's the right answer. Knight d7, for example, I'm not really sure what you're threatening. You're taking this knight away from b6, so the pawn on a4 is no longer protected. That's one consequence. How I cannot take immediate advantage of that is just by simply taking the pawn. And if you take my my bishop on e5, I can probably take back with the pawn. This bishop is kind of out of play on b4. It's not really having any active role. Knight on a6 definitely out of play. And I could potentially try to start bringing my queen to f6. If I manage to get there, I'm going to be winning. Long way, but still. I'm a pawn up. I don't have to hurry. We have opposite color bishops. I think white has the initiative. White has the better bishop. I'm going to play king g2, rook a1, and then maybe queen c1, queen f4. But first I want to make sure that your bishop doesn't get back into play. Your bishop, I want him to stay strained here on b4, blocked by his own pawn. If you want to take it out, you might want to sacrifice the pawn. But that's a completely different story. Yeah. So knight d7, too passive. I would categorize it as too passive. Either rook to c8, either rook to d8. Yeah, those are the two moves I'm definitely eyeing in this position. I want to put my rooks on the central files, and I'm trying to challenge your piece's position, especially that queen on c2. That's another consequence of the c file getting opened up. The fact that your queen on c2 is slowly starting to lose its ground. So yeah, rook a c8, rook f d8, and the position is quite complicated. I don't like c4. It's not a huge blunder or anything like that. Nothing immediate happens. But I simply don't see the point of this move c4. I would like those central files to be opened up. And I would like my rooks to suddenly have an important role. Okay, rook h4, defending the pawn on e4. I like this. White is playing at least with a plan. He has a plan. He knows what he wants to do. He's defending the e4 pawn first, and then at some point he's going to try to play queen c1, queen f4. First he has to defend the e4 pawn. Rook c8, queen c1, playing with a plan. Sometimes even if the plan is wrong, playing with a plan is better than not playing with any plan. c3, b takes c3, and now I think black made a mistake. Okay, he took on c3 with the bishop. Let's see if it's a mistake. I'm not sure if it's a mistake or not. Bishop to f4. And now I think black has only one move to defend, which is what? I think the move he made was not very good. But I do think he had a better move. Well, that's a bit too greedy. Taking the rook is a bit too greedy. Again, I play queen f6. I'm threatening queen h8 or queen g7. I think the only way to defend is probably king f8, but right now, okay, what's the most precise way of ending the game? I want the most precise way. I think there might be more than one solution, but there's one that just forces resignation very quickly in the next 3 moves at the most. 2 moves actually. King to e7.
And then queen takes the h-pawn.
Does that force you?
Well, I get a passer on.
You're a rook down though. That's not the first thing you should be thinking about. No. You cannot think about just grabbing a pawn. You have to be thinking about what?
Nothing can stop that bishop from checking the king.
You have to be thinking about checkmating the king.
So bishop to d6.
Bishop to d6, that's a good idea. Continue with the first moves. Black only has one move after bishop d6. He can play king g8 or king e8. King g8,
Loses.
queen g7, checkmate, yeah? So he has to go king e8.
And then you bring the other bishop in with the check on b5.
Not necessary.
No?
That wins. 100%. That wins. But he would play rook c6 in that position, and you would have to do. Oh, actually, that wins as that forces a checkmate as well. What I'm firstly looking at is just trapping this king. The way to trap it is by bringing knight to e5, and now the bishop and the knight are controlling both his escape squares. The next move by force is going to be queen h8. There's absolutely nothing stopping me from doing that. With that being said, your move bishop b5 is also winning on the spot. For a different reason. I have to play rook to c6. You're basically canceling my defender of the e7 square. You're basically canceling this queen on b7. Because right now after rook c6, I'm simply going to play bishop takes e6 and then queen e7, right? And if you put something in front on the 7th rank, like knight d7, then once again you're canceling the queen on b7, and queen to e7 comes on the spot. So I guess the difference between the bishop b5 and knight e5 is just a difference of taste, but both of them are winning, completely winning. So taking the rook, that's too greedy. He played a move f5, but I don't think that's the best move. I think knight d7 was the best move. Just simply defend the f6 square. And there's a saying in chess that knights are the best defenders.
Or what?
Are the best defenders. close to the king. So whenever we're under attack, we try to bring our knights back. Bring our knights closer to the king. They're very potent defenders, very, very powerful ones. So I think knight d7, black is doing fine. Black is controlling f6. How are you going to get there? Not sure. You have to eliminate somehow the knight on d7, and that's not going to be an easy task. So I think after knight d7, black was doing fine. Unfortunately for him, he played f5. And now white took the brave decision, but I think accurate, of just giving up the rook. Bishop takes a1. How to continue? Force moves. Knight g5. Supporting f7. Rook f8. He has to defend against that. And now white played a very interesting move. I don't know if it's correct. I will have to check it with the engine, but I think from a practical point of view at least is quite a nice move. Forcing his way through. Blasting open black's position. Bishop to h5. Another nice move. He's threatening bishop takes g6, h takes g6, then h7, then f7, and just checkmate, yeah? He's going for it. The guy is ultra aggressive. The guy doesn't believe in anything. Just wants to checkmate the black king. He doesn't believe in material. Knight c4. Now, if he takes here, I think we can just go queen g3. And now once again, we're starting to threaten f7, and then knight takes e6. The king is very, very weak, yeah? I'm not sure how black defends. This might actually be an accurate sacrifice. And here is why. They're doing nothing. All of his pieces are simply doing nothing. He has one defender, one poor rook on f8. That's not doing anything.
4 pieces coming in.
4 pieces coming at you. Yes, yes, no, I mean, conceptually, white played very well, you know, just extremely aggressive, but justified, because black's pieces were on the other side. So knight c4, bishop takes g6, knight takes e5, f7 check. Yes, hopefully it works. Hopefully it works. It has to work. Ah, right, it does work. If you take with the knight, checkmate in 2 moves. Bishop takes h7 and queen f6 checkmate. So he's forced to take with the rook. Let's see how he continued. Okay, knight takes f7. I'm thinking knight f6 or queen f6. Sorry, knight takes e6, not knight f6. There's no such thing as knight f6. Okay, let's see how he played. I think knight e6 works as well. Knight e6 with the idea to play rook g4 and checkmate him like that. But let's see what he calculated. Okay, you are going to take my queen. That's almost a given. But I'm not sure if black is going to have enough counterplay after that or not. Let's see. So the question is, why didn't he play king f8? I think this was the critical line. We have to continue with queen d6, with the check. Now if he goes king e7,
You just check him on, yeah, G8.
actually not sure where. G8 works, I think, because you're threatening to checkmate me here on G7. I have the defense of playing bishop takes D4, but then right now I think you can just capture this pawn on E6 and now create a double attack, and then that's it. Yeah. Yeah, because your king is extremely unsafe. From material point of view, black is doing perfectly fine.
Yeah, he's got 3 pieces for the queen.
3 pieces for the queen. But when you have this type of material imbalances, especially against the queen, if the queen has targets and if the king is weak, then the queen is most of the times going to be superior.
Yeah, your 3 pieces have to be coordinated.
Coordinated. Coordination, whether that means coordinated for the attack or coordinated for the defense. Unfortunately, in this position, your pieces are not coordinated for anything, and your king is extremely weak. So my queen has a lot of targets. Let's see what he did. Queen to G6, rook takes G6, and the same story. Queen for 3 pieces, but my queen is just a monster. I wouldn't have allowed that, but this wins also because of queen b6, I would assume. Yeah, I think he gave him a bit too many chances. He should have finished him a little bit easier, but this is winning as well, of course. Though you always have to be afraid of blockades, you know. When you only have a queen, if you lose the pawn on e4, you will have to worry about blockades. The problem is I don't think he's going to be able to give that bishop away for the pawn. That pawn is basically more valuable than your bishop on f2. And white understood that, and he made very good use of it. Queen to d7. Well, actually he resigned after rook f8. Probably he played a move, he resigned because queen d7 comes on the board. King f6, white pushes the pawn, and that's it, game over. I'm going to promote, then it's going to be a queen for the bishop, and just a winning position. So I'm quite impressed. I'm quite impressed with this attack by white. He sacrificed absolutely everything. Once he started sacrificing, he never looked back, you know. If you do look back, and if you stop playing powerful moves, if you stop playing moves such as bishop h5 to try to completely shatter black structure on the king side, then you're just going to be a rook down. So you have to, go for broke, go all in. And he did. White did that, and he got repaid. So congratulations to JamesKirkland in his victory against, what's his name? BanelingKing.